Okay, I think we can start. Start the recording. So we are looking at the SIP trapezoid, and we were discussing the forward invite structure which was there. So I will actually move ahead from there.
In invite matrix, there is a feed from to and from both sides, the release center and boundary center, where there is need a contact field, where there is a need of contact field.
It's like there is a one public address which never change. So to and from actually is for that, but the contact is at that point of time when this invite request is being sent, where actually that person is. So if you will actually notice in the contact field, after SIP colon whatever is the username at the rate, then it is for Alice it is pc33.atlanta.com, because her soft phone is actually being given that particular DNS name at that one time. So that is the actual location of that entity as at that point of time, but actually from outside, because she may keep on changing her IP addresses, this can happen dynamically, or she may plug in the phone at some other place, might get a different name. So this cannot be used as a universal ID, and when she is telling, for example, giving a visiting card to you, she cannot start, how will she will modify all the visiting cards which has already been distributed. So there has to be a universal naming which does not change. So that universal naming is related to domain name, and this contact name will also be there with what we call location server or registrar. So whenever she will change this, she will actually for your display whatever is your public URI, SIP URI, corresponding to that this will be the another URI. So this is what will be registered with the location service. You do not know, for example, about the Bob. Alice does not know what is the Bob's current contact. See, that is the whole problem. That is why invite has been sent, which goes to SIP proxy. SIP proxy sends to the proxy in the domain of where the Bob is there. That proxy then talks to the location server or registrar, finds out for this particular public URI, SIP URI of Bob, what is the current contact, and once it knows the current contact, it actually makes a invite request is sent to that contact URI machine, and while returning back, then the Bob will be putting up his contact. So both Bob and Alice will be knowing their actually current contacts, and they can do direct peering on that basis. They can even do direct signaling. After that, if the signaling has to be routed through proxies, it has to be mentioned explicitly when the invite request is sent.
It means that when OK is received by Alice, they can directly contact.
They can directly contact unless in the request setup invite requests, there are certain header fields which have been added. For example, in the forward invite, first thing you are putting was via. Every SIP proxy was putting a via entry. So by the time it reached to the Bob, there were 3 via entries which was there in our case. Now this via actually tells when the response has to be sent back, this should not be sent back directly, it has to be via this. So whatever is the topmost via thing, the response will be always sent to him. If there were no vias, the response would have been sent directly to the contact which was there in the invite structure in that request. So that was explicitly done actually there.
Second, when tag field in 2 from Bob to when sending the OK message, the tag field is added into two headers at that time
when the Bob will respond. I am now going to come to that response structure. Okay, because they are I think quite certain subtle things which I was also not clear earlier. I realized that the way it has been structured is not that simple, and then of course it is using its own kind of a layering structure for specification. It does not say how you are going to implement, but layering structure which has been identified also tells how the software will be implemented. So this also typically use what we call a 4-layer structure for implementation. So I think today I will first of all go with the response. I think I have already finished all the fields which were there in the invite request, nothing has been left. So response thing we have to look at, and then of course we will move over to that particular layering which is used inside the SIP what we call entities. There can be many SIP entities, and then we have to actually understand. I have been talking about stateful and stateless proxies. They are not actually, there are 4 entities technically. I was not explaining about stateful proxy can be further split into multiple things. So, we have call stateful, we have transaction stateful, and we have what we call B2B user agent, B2 back to back user agents actually. So, that also can be there, and there are very minor subtle differences, but each one of them actually will have a different capability. All kind of elements can be there. Usually most of these things are also happening even in other designs which are proprietary, not SIP based, but they take a different form. Okay. Well, same thing must be there with Skype, same thing must be there even Google Talk. Some of them they may not be implementing, or functionalities have been shifted, names must have been different, but architecturally yes, this is a very generic structure. Okay. And this has evolved over time. The earlier RFC and this RFC actually has some differences because of this. So, coming to that OK thing, what? So, the response which will be there, and I think this is the SIP trapezoid which we are talking about. So, the invite was sent in this direction, and each one of them have added their own via headers. So, first one was added by this, second one by this, third one by this. So, 3 via headers which were there. So, there is a thumb rule that most of the fields will actually be copied when the response will be generated. Most of the fields will be copied back into the response. Okay. So, this example, currently I am giving an example, later on I will give the specification for the request and response structure itself. There is a formal specification being given. So, usually it will be look something like this. So, this first line in the response will always start with this thing. The first thing will be SIP. Usually it is a character case insensitive, but machines are expected to always put capital letters, the way it is done with HTTP also. Okay. This is a literal string, it is not a number, while in HTTP case it is counted as a number, but that does not matter as far as the implementation goes. But conceptually that is a difference. They actually have kept lot of things, borrowed lot of things from HTTP in this case. Now, there will be always a space, one space, there cannot be 2 spaces. Okay. There has to be exactly one space character. So, a space character cannot be used inside the strings, that is very important here. If it has to be escaped. Escaping, I think all of you do understand or not. All of you must have used LaTeX at some point of time for your document processing system. So, LaTeX has a very nice character, this one, this is a control character. Okay. You want to type this character in the LaTeX, how you will do that? Is there a way to type this character? How that will be done?
Dollars, then here, then dollar.
No, dollar is for some mathematical substring. If I want to write equation, so this will go in math mode, it is for that purpose. Suppose I want to put this string itself should be visible in the text. How you will do that? You are writing a book on LaTeX where you want to explain how to write a math thing. So, you have to put this as a character, but the moment you put it, it will write a math equation A is equal to B plus C, it will write this, it will not write this thing. How you will get this dollars? You have to use a escaping sequence. So, there is a special character which is being defined, which is this. If I put this character just before this, the special meaning of this is lost. This also has a special meaning, so I can also put this. So, these are now literal strings. So, these two combined together when they will be passed will be, now you will see something like this. This is what is escaping, but the problem is when this character itself has to be shown, then I put another backslash, it removes the special meaning which is attached with this.
This means a new line. This means new line.
No,
Yes, sir.
this is not a new line in case of LaTeX.
It's a new line.
These are basically you are removing what we call, you are escaping the earlier character, otherwise you cannot print this.
I think it's new line.
It is not, you check. It is an escaping character, it is not possible. It is being used for that purpose. Well, a very simple thing like you have math mode, you put like something like this, or begin. Begin is typically /begin math, I think something like, yeah, and then so all these are special characters, they all start with this, that is why it is a special thing, but this itself can be escaped by putting just one backslash before this. Okay. That new line, I think, which you are to certain places actually it is being used, I will tell you where, especially if you want to write out what we call the text based configuration file in Unix. So, this single backslash is also used as a what we call, it is only breaking in a physical system or while you are doing C programming, but actually it is considered as a one single line. So, one single large line can be broken, and when written into a .txt file, it is being written as whatever you are writing slash, whatever is slash, whatever is slash. Now, when the machine is going to parse it, so this is A, B, C, D, it will actually read it as A, B, C, D new line like this. So, sometimes you require, for example, when you are implementing printfs and other thing, and lines become too long for the messages, then usually you do it. That is again a common use. Again that is a special character there in this case, but that is within a string. So, when you are doing a printf and you have to print this particular thing, then there is again a problem. So, you use a printf command and you put this then there is a problem actually. So, if you want to print this itself, you have to again do escaping. So, escaping is a pretty good notion. In fact, SDLC when I was teaching, I have talked about this escaping. So, what was that escaping thing which I taught? There should not be continuous, because 0, 6 ones and 0 is the start header. 0, 6 ones and 0 should not, or 6 continuous ones should not happen inside the string. So, I implemented a bit stuffing. So, that is escaping actually rule. After every 5 ones, I insert a 0. So, even if there are only 5 ones in actual data and a 0, still I am adding a 0. So, that why on the receiving side I can simply remove it. Same rule also applies here. So, certain characters, control characters cannot be transmitted in the strings which you are doing, they have to be escaped. Okay. Otherwise, you cannot interpret. This in fact also happens even in your HTTP transport or in XML schemas, where certain characters actually have a special meaning. I think another character which you remember is this XML schema. So, I can put a tag, I can close a tag. Now, I want to put this itself actually inside as an argument, then how I will do it. There is some field, and this is only a literal thing, this should not be interpreted by XML parser. Similarly, there is a character called ampersand, but when you use in HTTP, you always write this thing as something else which comes here, I think. Something like this is there, I have forgotten that. So, we use AMP semicolon and something else here. there is some initial command, initial character. This 4 characters, 5 characters actually represent one single character. Sometimes in the URL which you have been actually using, you must be using percentage 20F or something, you must be seeing in the URL. That actually is a single character, but that is URL encoded. So URL encoding is also, there is an RFC on that. So all control characters which have a special meaning are converted to something else. And the reverse side again, reverse conversion takes place, and that is how in your file names you can still use a space in Unix. Otherwise, whenever you press, you put a file name, that is a separation between 2 arguments, but file name can actually have a space. So I give you a file which contains ABC, there is a space there, XYZ. When I will do ls, usually you will see ABC XYZ, you will tend to see these are 2 files, these are not 2 files. But now you want to do a VI editor, you do ABC space XYZ, you cannot edit the file, because the moment you see space VI will assume there are 2 arguments, it is not 1 argument. So whenever you have to do a VI editor, you have to use, for editing you have to put a backslash and a space, and then it will be taken as a string. So that control functionality of the space has been now aborted, the whole thing is taken as a string by VI editor. So this is, I think, in computing is pretty common, same thing will be required here. Well, I just wanted you to appreciate what the escaping is. Well, there are a lot of ways, everybody does it, all the time it is being done unknowingly or knowingly. Okay. So the first field will be this, and then of course as I told that 3 guys have already added the via headers, so I am actually putting all the 3 of them. So again this header must be having a description, it is as per that format. It says the one to whom you are going to send back the response is a SIP 2.0 compliant proxy. It is going to use a UDP transport, that is what has to be used when communicating back. And the guy who has inserted this, or where you have to send back your response first, is this. So you remember that this one was a SIP server for bloxy.com. So what has been informed to this guy is, when you send the response back, send it to this person, and it actually will remove this particular via field when the response will be moved further. Okay.
Sir, this 200 also means okay, so 200
200 and okay, 200 is for the machine. This is interpreted as a, basically the first field will always give version number, is a fixed format, one single space. This is what will be fed to the machine, or the automata which is implemented there as a software or a program will be understanding this particular thing, and based on that finite state machine will change the state. This is for the humans, machine will not interpret what is written here. You can even write in Hindi if you wish, that is permitted. You can actually write that is also permitted. Remember, I have escaped the spaces, and you have to actually set a header field in this case, which is a, I think, accept language :HN, that is possible. So machine is not going to read it, so it does not matter. For this, it is a UTF-8. Remember, all encoding is UTF-8. So any language of the world, almost all languages actually have UTF-8 encodings, can be used for transactions. So it, so far I think I have not seen anything in, except in certain countries where English is not being used commonly, they actually do the encoding in their languages, but in India we somehow have been following only English, but Hindi variants might actually be existing. But I think SIP server India nobody manufactures, we mostly build on whatever is on the open source, some small companies, but they are not focused on the English, Hindi aspect actually. So, most of the engineers who are going to manage, they already know English, maybe after 10th class they have stopped reading Hindi, after that everything is in English actually, but that is technically possible, the provision has been made. Basically it is mostly because of China, Japan, Russia, and then of course French, Spanish countries, language people which are there. English is not everywhere, English is not a very prominent language by the way, but somehow because US build most of things have been done first, English is there, but because it has to be also become popular, the English and French you will always find that everything will have two variants. Although I think Hindi is the third most speaking, biggest speaking language actually, largest number.
Chinese is the first.
Chinese first, I think, then French or something, or
Chinese.
French is I think very big lot, French and English. Hindi comes I think 4th, 5th something, somebody was showing me the list, but we still do not have implementations in that. But we do now permit your URLs, for example, when you are going to browse, you can type in your URL of your browser in Hindi, that is technically possible. Firefox permits that in UTF-8, and that will be resolved by DNS, and you can actually go to a site. So, I have not checked, maybe Google might be actually providing a domain name in Hindi for Google. So, you can try that out if you wish, you have to check with them, but multilingual domain names are now feasible, because everything has to be in UTF-8, all standards have been, this is also in UTF-8 because of this, it is not ASCII character set. Okay. Only thing, this particular thing has been specified, this particular thing has been specified, this can be in Hindi, does not matter, it is a UTF-8 string. Okay. Only keywords now has to be in English, because they have been specified freeze, that you cannot touch. For computer does not understand language, for him it is a string, it is a byte code. So, this particular byte sequence means this. So, you are building up FSM based on that. So, in fact, a lot of when you are actually going to build up a machine, you write up software, you do not remember these whole characters, usually you need not. You can convert this character to only whatever is required to identify a state variable, that is it. Okay. So, this will have typically a semicolon. Now, remember, if it is semicolon, it is not a separate value, this is the header field, this is the value. Values will always be separated by comma if there are multiple values which are existing for a header field. Semicolon is nothing but is for this particular value itself there is another attribute which is coming in. Okay. So, this semicolon, and this branch will be some random sequence. I actually have mentioned this same thing earlier also, and this gives the IP address of where that has to go back. Okay. Second VI field will be there. So, I think I can skip, you can just copy whatever was written last time. I have even not written a full string actually here. So, this will be now this one, because this must have added it first. This will say big box 3.atlanta.com semicolon, here also is a semicolon. Remember, even if I am actually writing it in a different line, they all have to be in the same line. They all have to be in the same line. Okay. There is no CRLF. In fact, I should write another character called this is carriage return and line feed. Carriage return is whatever is your printer, technically you are printing one by one the character, you are here. So, carriage return is you are moving back to the 0 column, and line feed is you are moving to the next line. So, CRLF technically are two, carriage return is one and LF is another one, 2 characters actually. So, different machines handle it in file systems, this is actually done in a different way. So, it is the end of line technically, EOL we call it. So, this has to be there. So, in this case the end of line is not here, end of line happens here. So, I should explicitly mention that. This actually is word for keyword, but I am using it for CRLF, carriage return line feed. Okay. So, CRLF is, I am representing it by this. So, it will also have some branch number which is assigned by that particular machine. Similarly, there will be third wire which is added by the sender. This is one single space, it's not, these are not 2 spaces, exactly one space, okay, and that is a specification. The last one will say PC33. Atlanta.com. It will also have a branch, some random string received, and then of course comes the remaining field. So, 2 field will be copied directly as it is. 2 field was, what was it actually earlier? It was Bob, okay. 2 field which was there, first letter is always capital, then all is small, unless the word actually changes.
Sir, so this received IP, it means the next fire where it will go?
Is the IP of that particular server 10.bloxy.com. I think that is what it means. So far I could not find out a spec, but my guess is it should be that. There is no other purpose for this.
So, this branch parameter identifies the transaction between 2 people.
It is a random string.
No, random string is for what? Identification of what transaction?
It must be for identification of for transaction.
Between 2 people. Who are 2 people?
This is between the proxy and the Bob, the client for Bob. This particular one between the proxy, second proxy and the client. This is between the 2 proxies. This is between the first client and the proxy.
Sir, in earlier case, when we saw the message.
So, this is basically it for identification, because you might be issuing multiple things, for example, multiple invites. So, when the response comes back, you have to figure out it is for which one. So far session has not been, in fact there are many parameters which can be matched together. But what happens, you need not go to the bottom thing and then actually match all the entries there, you can just match the first thing here itself. If this thing matches, then only you go down further.
Sir, earlier this received IP was not required to be specified. Why it is required now in this case, in the response case? When we saw the invite messages?
Meaning VI field it was there, na?
No sir.
Just a minute, just a minute. I think then my interpretation has to change, because I could not locate any interpretation in the RFC so far. It's a huge document anyway, I have only done it partially. Yeah, there was no received. I think this is, okay, then this must be the IP address of the machine which must have received, who is responding back, must be for that. So that guy can figure out whom actually he has sent, and then match with that as well as the branch number, whatever is the random string. I think that must be the logic. It does not bother, there is a packet or circuit. It is a message transfer between at the application layer.
Agreed, but the same path will be used for going and as well as coming back.
No.
It does not know about the path. There is a UDP connection. How the UDP packet is being routed through the actual physical network is the headache of IP layer.
My guess is this, when the response is going back, So you have not to consult the DNS server and all these things. That's why they're using. This should be SIP proxy number. Again, even when they're sending back the response, so you need not to consult the location server and DNS server again. So just seeing this.
You need not. You anyway have the DNS anyway. DNS we don't bother. We don't call it a SIP server or something.
It could be the default gateway, sir, in case it takes a shorter connections. Because from the proxy to.
Okay, we actually leave it a question mark, and we can study SIP proxy, and we will find out. Then we will discuss that. So if we are not clear and we cannot figure out what could be the meaning, interpretation, so leave a question mark and let's investigate. That's the best strategy. Okay. So this I think I will, whenever I will find out, I will tell, because I don't know how much I will be able to go through the proxy and where it is given. Okay. So let's, whatever concept we can pick up, let's pick up those. And anyway, if you end up in implementing the software, you anyway have to find it out. So you have to read the full RFC and you will find it out. What's the meaning of this? I have not so far reached to the specification of wire structure. Okay. So 2 field again will contain here. The only difference is rest everything is remains same. It's a bob, angled brackets within which your SIP URI actually will be there. Okay. SIP URI also required all string has to be escaped string. Angled brackets cannot be used inside the SIP URI. That's very important. You have to use all strings which are escaped strings whenever the URI has to be communicated, and you cannot use angled brackets in your email. So you, for it's I think same way. For example, I cannot have a something like this. This email is not permitted because there is angled brackets, because these are usually used to enclose the email ID itself. Okay. Even angled brackets are used for a special purpose in programming. That's for actually templates. So that's a new concept which came later on C. Earlier C it was not there, but current NCC actually specifies these templates, which is a pretty powerful tool. So I write the same code and I can generate a code for depending on whatever is my requirement for different things, different piece of code. Okay. So whatever was the SIP URI, that sip:bob@blocksy.com, and then you will have a tag. Now this is something which is newly added, and this forms an important part. So remember 2 tags, one is in to, one is in from, and one is what we call ID. These 3 things put together specifies a dialog. Okay, it's not a transaction. When I send an invite and OK comes back, in fact any response which is non 1xx will complete the transaction. It is known as final response. Only 1xx is a provisional response, that is a non-final response. So transaction is over, but you might be doing other transactions. Ultimately you have to have a buy, for example, as a transaction. So all transactions which corresponds to same dialog should actually have the same tag values in to, tag value in from, and the call ID has to be same. That is how the association to the same call dialog actually happens, because the one guy might be making a multiple calls. So when a message comes, it has to be associated to a call. So this triplet is the core here to identification, for the identification of calls. Okay. So this tag value sub will be some random string, from will be copied as it is, whatever was there in the Alice when the things were actually sent. I think I had Alice sip::Alice @atlanta.com. Okay.
Tag will be of the same values as what was sent previously.
What was sent by in the invite, this tag will also be exactly copied from the what has been received in the invite. So, even if two different invites come and this guy by chance sends the same tag, the call dialog will be different. Okay. This and the call ID, these three uniquely identifies a call dialog.
This will be, sir, call dialog will be up till what, sir? Till the time they directly
Till the time the whole call is over,
So when is
when the buy comes actually or error happens.
or till the time they set up directly peer to peer.
No, even after that the dialog will be maintained.
Dialog will be maintained till the time they terminate the connection.
See, they may not route the signaling message through this thing, proxies. See, once the call has been set up,
Then
they can
directly
directly do
yes,
signaling
yes.
also, na?
Yes, sir.
Then also call dialog has to be specified.
Termination signaling, sir. Termination signaling can be done peer to peer. Directly.
Can be done.
After the initial setup, signaling can.
Unless report route has also been configured by these C proxies. If at any point of time when the invite was sent, one of the proxies says record route and puts its own address there, then that will be maintained at both. With the Bob will maintain it because he receives the invite. The same field will be copied back in the response. So Alice will also receive it. So they both now have to do signaling only through that proxy, because that the record route for this particular call dialog has been maintained, mentioned in the beginning. Then the buy, when buy has to be sent for call termination, has to go through that proxy. In current case, the example which I am taking, record route has not been inserted while forwarding the invite. So buy will be happening peer to peer, it will not be through proxy. If via would not have been put, even the responses could have been avoided and could have been sent to only the last via, which is this one. So invite goes this way, the OK comes in this fashion. Only problem in that case is if it is a call stateful proxy, it will not know the status whether the call is through or not through. Usually if it is a call stateful proxy, this via headers have to be put by call stateful proxies. And not transaction stateful proxy. Transaction stateful proxy is a different thing. Transaction happens only between a client and a proxy. So a transaction is happening between these. Then a transaction is happening between these. Okay. And this is a transaction user running here. I will come to this particular structure actually. And when the response comes back, they keep on sending the response back. If it is a stateless proxy, this will not remember anything. This whatever comes is simply forwards, it does not remember what it has forwarded. When something comes back, it sends it back, that is it. It does only proxying. So I will come to actually that particular figure which is required to actually identify this thing. Then you will have call ID, this is going to be same which was there in the earlier communication, the invite. Remember, this is a response, there is no method being specified there because of this. Okay. Then sequence, this will also be copied from the invite. So there was a method which came, there was a corresponding sequence number. This response as a result of when that method was executed. So the sender will be able to figure out the response corresponds to which particular command. When it will send the next command, again the number will change. So if some command gets missed out, it can figure out that I have not received the response to this particular command. I have got for 1, I am not able to get a response for 2, but got a response for 3. So it can figure out what particular commands have not been executed. But all final responses for all commands should arrive back. So this sequence number actually helps in doing that actually. And then of course this is contact which was not there earlier, this is now what will be added. Okay, this will be telling that this Bob, this will not be Bob sip::Bob @ biloxi.com. This will be where he is actually current, as of now he is staying, current location. Okay, this is where the peering will be done. And interestingly, SIP is not the only URI for telephony. There is a TEL, tel URI, which is also used by a lot of people. So SIP also can be used to carry not only SIP but tel URI also. But then how those will be interpreted is a different question. So in this case 0.2.4. Now I think from here, yeah, now I can get. What has happened is this IP address has to be of the proxy. From here I can guess. This is not the one who is giving the answer back. This is for the proxy. So it is only telling that when I received the packet, I received from this particular IP address, when it is sending the response back. Okay, and it is responding back to whatever IP address which will be resolved from here. So it is technically possible that there is another machine which is running here. So invite comes in this invite was received from here, and this has put a via entry for this particular one, another machine sitting in the same domain. So it will send the entry here, response will be sent here, a different machine, because when the via entry was done, this server 10, there is server 1, server 2, server 3, server 9, server 10. So invite was received from this IP address, but response has to go back to this. That's what actually it means. And this same thing is being copied back. This is a copied back stuff, remember. Only this thing was added depending on from where you received the invite request. I think that's what the interpretation should be. There cannot be anything else now.
Again, my interpretation is that only to avoid the lookup, they are adding the IP address. Because
if that has to be done, then even this is not required. You just put the via field.
Then it should be there, because if you remove this server proxy, again you do not giving IP address. So what path you have to do? Again you have to look up from the velocity.
You will look up.
You look up, but to avoid that lookup, you can put the IP address. The only reason I can figure out.
But then in that case, why did this need to be added back? Question is this. This guy who is sending the response back, this person, already knows from which IP address I got it. This IP address is of no use to this guy.
No, this guy will send to this proxy and then will remove this, because this is
But why this need to be added?
only for Bob. Bob is no, he has to
See,
send.
Bob has already, when it got the invite, that time he knows what is the IP address. When you are sending this messages for this guy, it's a response. So this is only for verification purpose, that in this domain I am sending the message back to you, but the response which I am sending was received to me, invite was received from this route. So I received it from here, and this is where it is going to be sent back. So you are sending an information, and you are telling him that this particular thing was inserted when the invite was there by this proxy. I think this is for this is a very subtle thing again. So these two things can be different. If indeed it is going to send this thing back to him, then both of them will be same. You are right. Then both of them, this also DNS should resolve the same IP address. But I think the clue here is, I think RFC specifically, again even how the naming is done is also discussed. Server 10 probably must have been done intentionally. Why not only server.bloxy.com in the text? Server 1, server 2, server 3, server 10, it actually telling there are multiple servers. And when proxy is sending, this must be this IP address. IP address they have just put it, it's actually 192.0.2.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4. That's what must have been done in the RFC. Even these namings are also so that people can understand. They should not misunderstand this stuff. They can make out lot of things through this mechanism. So I think this must be the reason. Okay. So this is the fourth IP address, which now even clarifies that. This is the contact. Now pc33.atlanta.com corresponds to 192.0.2.1, which is this particular client, where Alice is there. And then of course I think rest is all straightforward. Contact type,
This dot 4 is of Alice, sir.
Dot 4 is for Bob.
Which one?
So this Alice contact is not being copied here. Alice contact came from that side.
Yes. 2.4
Alice's
is-
contact come from the different side. Remember,
So this 2.4 is of Bob.
is for Bob. Is a contact of the guy who is sending the response. That was the contact of the person who sent the request. Okay. This to and from field is not for the response, because the response is not going back to the Bob, and it is not from Alice. So that can also be one of the confusion. This talks about the invite message. This is corresponding to the invite which was sent from Alice to Bob,
Yes, response to the
and
very
this
specific-
response is originating from this contact. So contact is the one who is from where the things are originating.
200 is also specific, that it is a response to that.
Yes. Okay. Because remember, these tag values and call ID, three things become the call dialog, and for the call dialog, to and from is what is important. This to and from is not for the response or the invite, is who started the dialog.
This dialog will be same as the invite dialog, right? The call dialog.
Call dialog is only one, invite is one of the transactions which is happening inside a dialog, and this transaction will get completed when this OK will go back, final response.
And so this call dialog value, the response one will be different from the invite value.
Which one?
Invite
Call ID,
call
exactly same.
Exactly.
This will be same number at the rate pc33.atlanta.com. Some number which was there actually written last time. It must have been, I think, this A84B something, pc33 atlanta.com. So contact type in this case, content type, not contact, is a content type actually. Content type, this is a MIME type specification again. So this is again a session description. So this basically what kind of call is going to be set up, all parameters which are now being accepted by the Bob. So Alice might have told, I want a video call to be made, and video will be with this codec, audio will be with this codec, or these particular options are there. Okay, and now set up the call. This guy might revert back, I do not have a video. So if this SDP says no video, only audio is going to be there. So a subset of that will be accepted and sent. Content type, content length, these are all standard thing. So number of octets or bytes which are there, and then of course remember after each one of them CRLF is there, that is extremely important. Okay. After this, whatever is the character, so maybe say 131 I have written here some number, another CRLF. Even if you do not have any payload, any content attached, even then this CRLF has to be there, even if it is nil. If you are going to put content length is equal to 0, then also this carriage return line feed has to be there. So if you are actually creating through a VI editor, you are trying to build up a header file for a programming application, never forget this, because other side will not accept it in that case. Okay. You can try this thing if you wish for HTTP, that is even for this I think it should be possible. Do a telnet and do a telnet to port number 80 of a web server, do not do SSH. So telnet, and do not give a username, need not be given. So telnet to a machine space 80, you can even specify the port where the telnet has to be done. By default I think it is 23, by default I think it is 23, telnet is 23, FTP is 21. So most of the people actually do not know that they can change the port. So they do a telnet space and the machine where you want to do a login, but telnet is not a secure protocol, it is a clear text transport actually which is used, and then you can specify a port number 80. So, you do a telnet to a proxy, a TCP connection will be set up, and suddenly there is, it will not ask for login password because there is no challenge in that. It is not a telnet server running on the other side, there is no telnet D daemon on 80 port, it is a web server, mostly Apache or maybe something else. But then you will see suddenly a line, then you will write get whatever is the first command, you just type it out, nothing will happen once you press one enter. You have to write down all the header fields, and when this enter is made, then only the header will be interpreted by the machine on the other end. Because what is happening is, technically for HTTP I am creating a byte pipe, which is a TCP connection between two machines. As you are pressing characters, these characters will just be, there is an algorithm which is used to keep on waiting for certain number of characters, then it will be put in the frame, will be transported. This will keep on receiving the character, but will not start interpreting till it finds out two CRLFs together. When it figures out there are two CRLF fields together, header is finished, now let me parse it, and after that, once after the parsing, it will figure out how many characters it is supposed to receive after this, then it will keep on receiving those many bytes, then the HTTP request is all over. Because mostly HTTP is now using persistent connection. So, same TCP connection now can be used for another HTTP request. Earlier days HTTP, for every HTTP request separate TCP connection, response comes back, TCP connection closed, next one again you do the same thing. So, persistency was implemented later on actually. So, it becomes pretty fast, you only have to do it once, TCP connection. So, that overhead was actually removed. So, same thing is concept is also used here.
This 131 is the SDP length.
Is the length of the content which will start from this line onward. If it is 0, there is nothing after this, this is the end. There is no end of file in your Linux systems. Okay. So, mostly it is based on Linux system, so there is no end of file character. Your Microsoft, I think earlier file systems were actually using an end of file character at the end of the file. Here purely it is based on how many bytes have to be read from the beginning. So, it will read those many bytes, file is over. So, structurally it is same actually. So, this is what will be typically the response. So, let me quickly close through the complete transaction. So, for example, now what can happen is this guy is sending. So, first thing there was 100 which was coming trying, this also will receive 100. So, when the invite was sent, this can actually send something like 486 also. I am just giving an example, it is busy here. This is one of the codes. I will specify which particular one x axis for what, 2 axis for what, 3 axis for what. Okay. Now, this 486 is not received by this person, this is sent by Bob, because Bob may be talking to somebody. In that case, this proxy can actually decide that I can now try making a call to a voicemail box. So, this will be typically used for those kind of applications. If you want to change the parameters of the session in between, you will again send another invite, but now your sequence, your tags and call ID still will be maintained same. So, that invite is a re-invite, because it is not a fresh value, that fresh value states are being maintained by these two entities. In fresh invite, in this new re-invite basically, it can send the new parameters, new SDP. If it is acceptable, you will get 200 back. Okay. And this new invite need not be sent via proxies, this can be peer to peer, that is important, unless that record route thing is being configured in the beginning. And then of course, it can send 488 which is not acceptable, that is what is the meaning. So, remember these strings are application specific, these are not hard, this can be rewritten by you, machines will understand only these codes. There is only an interpretation of that for the humans. So, you can write it in Hindi, it is okay. So, these are not sacrosanct, these are sacrosanct numbers. So, if this comes, the call will remain with the older whatever agreement which they had actually. This typically happens if the bandwidth of this channel, for example, improves. There is a bandwidth estimation, bandwidth becomes better, you can say go for a better codec or better quality video, for example. You can again agree, but the other guy does not have the capability, or bandwidth goes down, then you can downgrade yourself. So, you can keep on negotiating on that basis, but remember media transport is separate than the signaling. Okay.
If this fails in the previous negotiation remain valid.
Yes. So, I think now after this we have to look at the layers, how you will organize this whole concept into layers. So, I think that we will discuss on in the Monday's class then. Okay. So, any other question?
So, who decide we have to do the route recall?
Proxies can decide. So, usually what happens is your telecom operator with whom you will actually have registered, your domain name server, it will usually tend to say I will always be involved in whatever signaling you do. I will not allow you to do a direct thing. But of course, if because both endpoints have the contact, they can override if they wish, but they are not supposed to be as per the standard.
It's only for signaling part.
It is only for signaling path, not for media. If you want a media proxying or media gatewaying in between, you will not actually, you will first of all what we call back to back, you will create two trapezoid in that case. That is typically the structure. This is your media gateway. So, signaling happens in this fashion. That could be one option, and then media goes in this fashion. There is another way of signaling. This guy wants it to go through the media gateway, or maybe there. So, it will actually have a media gateway, it will do the signaling to this guy, then it will do a signaling to this fellow. It is now doing a tricky thing, it is now telling him that this is the end user and making him peer to with him, and for on his behalf, now this is a media gateway control now, this is Megaco or even this can be used, not an issue. And for him actually now it is peering, and then there is a Bob, and Bob will start peering with this. So, one signaling path is this, other one is between these entities. That is another way of doing it. This is what we call back to back user agents, B2B UA. So, you have a user agent server here, user agent client here sitting, and they are back to back funneled together. And you can also build up tricks, for example, for signaling you can have B2B UA, but you might do media transport directly, that is also possible.